Okay, this is chapter 15 of The Meaning of Maggie. And if you remember in 14, it was having to do with the physical education class where she had to run a mile. And it was very difficult for her. And she had someone popular, Mary Winter, who helped her. So let's see what chapter 15 holds. I must have gained a lot of muscle from running because I no longer needed Mom's help getting the Nutella jar open, which meant I got Nutella without her permission, which meant my life was complete. And I felt better than ever when school ended. I got all A's again and won every award at awards night again. I kept my chin and bootstraps up as I signed Mary's yearbook at the yearbook signing party after study hall. She'd blocked off a little corner just for me, and I wrote extra small so I could fit in all my well wishes for her over the summer. I wrote how lucky it was that she got to go to summer school, and how double lucky it was that we became friends in gym, and I hoped we would have a class together again next year. But maybe not gym. Maybe something super fun like Latin or geometry. And I promised to keep running, or at the very least, take up speed walking like an old lady in the mall with cool hats and even cooler fanny packs. I was just dotting my last I when another yearbook slid across the table next to me. I looked up, and there he was, Clyde. Hey, Maggie, want to sign my yearbook? I almost choked, and I wasn't even chewing anything, which was unusual. I was nervous, but I pulled it together. Yeah, sure. I opened his yearbook, and it was covered in like a zillion signatures, mostly from girls. I couldn't find an empty spot anywhere. He seemed to have gotten really popular, especially with the ladies. Where should I sign? He scratched the back of his head like some kind of rock star philosopher. How about next to your picture? I turned to the page where my picture should have been. Oh, I don't have one this year. See? Were you sick on picture day or something? No, I wanted to wear a tricorn hat, like George Washington, and they wouldn't photograph me wearing it, so I refused to have my picture taken at all. Really? Clyde laughed. That's pretty cool, standing up for what you believed in and everything. Well, I was sitting, but thanks. I found an empty space on the second to the last page. How about right here? Perfect. Want me to sign yours? I couldn't believe it. He wanted to sign my yearbook. I tried to keep my hand from shaking as I passed it to him. He opened it and was immediately impressed. Wow, there are a lot of signatures in here. From teachers. I tried to be modest. Yeah, they really like me. He started writing, and my brain blanked. What should I write? Should I tell him to keep in touch? No. You can't keep in touch if you're not in touch in the first place. Should I profess my love for him in a no-holds-barred essay referencing my extensive research about how we were meant to be? Maybe not. What would Dad tell me to write? He would tell me to say something cool. So I did just that. Dear Clyde, have a perfect summer. I'll see you next year, close to the harvest. Get it? Like Neil Young's Harvest? I hope you get it. I'm sure you did. You get everything. And if you need any book recommendations over the summer, I have about 1,000. Sincerely, Maggie. I handed the yearbook back to him, and he handed mine back to me, and away he went, off into the metaphorical summer sunset. I wasn't by his side, but I hoped I was in his heart. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, I searched for the page he signed in my yearbook. I couldn't find his signature anywhere. I went page by page and finally found it where I least expected it. On the same page, in the same square where my picture was supposed to be, Clyde had sketched a portrait of me, and I was wearing a tricorn hat, just like George Washington's. Next to it, he had written, Stay cool, Maggie. Peace. Stay cool, Maggie Mayfield. Peace. Clyde. I pressed the book close, hoping his words would transfer by osmosis directly into my heart. He thought I was cool. The final bell of the school year rang, and I realized I had never been happier. I decided I would keep up with my running over the summer. Well, for a couple of weeks anyways. I ran up and down our neighborhood and saw things I'd never seen before because I'd really only been up our street in a car. The farthest I'd ever walked was to the mailbox, and that was only once a month when National Geographic arrived. It turned out there was a whole world out there, full of other families doing other things. I passed one house with a dad playing basketball with his son, and I wondered if Dad's legs were awake, and if I were a boy, would we be doing that same thing? Probably not. I bet even as a boy, I'd be too smart for sports. I'd always stop in front of the house at the top of the hill when I was on an evening run. I'd peer into the window where the mom was always in the kitchen doing dishes or making dinner or cleaning something. And I remember when my mom was always doing something in our kitchen window, and it seemed like forever ago. Before she was a puddle of clothes. Before I had to share her with all those hotel guests. So much had changed since the summer before, and not just my calves, although they were significantly shapelier. I even hung out with Layla and Tiffany, and not against my will. When they lathered up in SPF 0 and lay out on towels in the driveway, I joined them. Well, I joined them from the safety of the shade I'd created with 3 umbrellas and an old tarp from the garage. I didn't want to damage my fair skin. Dad always said I would have been adored in the Victorian age, which I like to think about because I always felt like I belonged to an era except the one I was born into. I especially felt a connection to eras where they wore layers and layers of underpants and read books by candlelight and enjoying mandolins and drinking tea. It was shaping up to be a perfect summer until one day when it took a sudden and peculiar turn. I was partaking in some light summer reading, of Leaves of Grass, while Layla and Tiffany read 17 magazines in their usual sunning spot. All was quiet on the home front. Even Dad was outside with us catching some rays while reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance for the millionth time. But the quiet was broken when Mom's car zoomed up the driveway. She slammed on the brakes and just stopped short of pancaking Layla and Tiffany. They jumped up in terror. Dad yelled some bad words, and Mom freaked. "What are you doing lying in front of the driveway?" she screamed out the window. "Us?" Tiffany yelled. "What are you doing going 90 up the driveway in the middle of the afternoon?" "Everyone calm down," Dad commanded, and then he laughed. "And let's remember, it was your mother who almost killed you, not me." "That's enough. I really am sorry," she said. "I should have called first to tell you I was coming home early, but I have good news. Phyllis and Donnie are coming to visit." Oh dear. Phyllis and Donnie were Mom and Dad's hippie burnout friends from way back. They used to visit when I was little, whenever they were on their hippie motorcycle trips to hippie places across the country. But we hadn't seen them in a while. I assumed they'd been kidnapped or turned to a life of crime. This was exactly what my perfect summer didn't need. A night of swapping anti-war stories with a bunch of degenerates. Mom rushed us all inside. "Time to clean up. They'll be here tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I asked. That didn't seem like enough time to hide the valuables. What's the rush? "Well, it's your dad's and my wedding anniversary. What better way to celebrate than with friends? Plus, we need witnesses." "Witnesses to what? Are you planning a bank heist?" Dad laughed, which I thought was the wrong reaction for someone being accused of a felony. "Your mother and I are going to renew our wedding vows right here." "What's that mean?" Mom smiled. "It means there's going to be a wedding." The next morning, I heard a loud rumble from the window. 2 homeless-looking people were parking their motorcycle in our driveway. Dad joined me at the window and waved to them. "Don't wave to them," I yelped. "For all we know, they could be murderers. I'm afraid we have to let these murderers inside." I leaned forward. They looked like they had done time, hard time. I had to get Tiffany. If anyone knew how to chase off bad people, it was Tiffany. She chased me away all the time, and I was a good person. I ran to our room and flung open the curtains. "Look outside," I hissed at Tiffany, who was still prone on the bed. Are these the scariest people you've ever seen?" "No, you're the scariest person I've ever seen," she said without even looking. Layla must have heard the panic in my voice because she came to see what was up. "Do you think they're going to kill us in our sleep?" I asked. "No, but they are creepier than I remember. They even have skeletons on their shirts." "What's creepier than that?" That made me wonder where else they were keeping skeletons. Layla looked worried. "God, I hope they don't come to my wedding one day." She had a point. "Geez, I hope they don't come to mine either." Tiffany was awake now. "No one's coming to your wedding, Maggie. Not even the groom." She was the worst, but I didn't have time to deal with her. I ran into the living room. "Hey, parents, we have a consensus. These people are terrifying, and we don't really think you should let them in." There was a knock at the door. "Too late," Mom laughed. I can't die. I'm going to be president of the United States." Dad shushed me away while Mom opened the door. Phyllis was the first one in. "Hey, y'all." As her skull shirt moved closer, I started to lose it. We're all gonna die. I'd never be president. Forget it. Forget of the United States. I'd never be president of my class. And I had a really good platform for the next election, too. Free Pizza Fridays. But I'd never get to rally for it because I'd be dead, with no free pizza for anyone ever again. Phyllis hugged Mom so hard, I thought Mom's arms might pop off. "I missed you so much," her scratchy voice kept repeating. When she finally released Mom, I got a good look at her. At first thing I noticed was a mood ring she wore as a wedding band. It was bright red, which meant she was happy, excited, anxious, and or in love. The next thing I noticed was her long, wavy red hair, followed by her blue jeans that belled at the bottom. And then I noticed the skeletons on her shirt again. And then I noticed they were heading straight for me. And then I took a deep breath. My feet felt the ground as she pulled me into the skull on her chest, which I assumed wasn't the last skull I would see that day. "Oh my God, you look like your daddy." My feet thumped back to the ground, and Phyllis moved on to her next victim, Layla, and then Tiffany. "Look at these beauties. Y'all look like your mother. She was such a little knockout." Dad wheeled her on next to Phyllis. "She's still a knockout." Phyllis's mood ring faded to green, which meant she was uneasy, restless, scared. I wondered why she felt any of those things. Maybe she didn't recognize Dad without long hair. Maybe she was scared the police had bugged him with a wiretap. Maybe she'd seen a wheelchair with an "I'm proud of my honor roll student" bumper sticker on the back of the seat. She took a deep breath, and tears welled in her eyes, turning her blue mascara into an ocean. "Is that my Danny?" Dad wheeled closer and pinched her in the tush. "Yep, that's my Danny," she yelped. "What do you say? Are you ready to get hitched again?" Donnie came in next, and he didn't say much, but high-fived us all, which is totally weird. He put his bags on the floor, and they immediately made our whole house smell like the Renaissance Festival. I snooped around their stuff and took in every detail just in case I needed to explain anything to the police. Donnie set a banjo against the wall, and Phyllis pulled something wrapped in a scarf out of her bag. It might have been a gun, so I closed my eyes and mentally prepared for the end. But nothing happened, and when I opened my eyes, she was holding a giant egg with a painting on it. "This is for your daddy. He always wanted me to paint him a wolf howling at the moon." "Did you make this?" "I sure did. It's one of my babies," I mumbled. "Cool." But I nervously wondered if this woman laid eggs. Sure, scientifically, physically, and anatomically, it wasn't possible, but you never knew, especially with this weirdo. I would have asked Dad, but he probably wouldn't have told me for another 10 years. Donnie fixed the grown-ups Coca-Colas with more than Coca-Cola in them. Dad told us to clean up outside for the ceremony, so Layla, Tiffany, and I wandered into the backyard. I still didn't really get what was happening. I mean, they were already married. They didn't need to get married again. That's like taking a test twice, although I wasn't opposed to taking tests twice. I picked up some sticks and pine cones, threw them over the fence. I'd forgotten how big our backyard was. Great, even more places to hide a body. I pulled a few weeds, and then I heard everyone come outside. Dad was looking at Donnie's motorcycle all wide-eyed. "What do you say, Danny?" Donnie asked with a nudge. "How about a ride?" Tiffany's extra bad kid side kicked in. "Yeah, Dad, do it." "Saddle me up," Dad shouted. I was clearly the only sane person in this family. "No way," I protested. "You could crash and break a femur, tibia, fibula, patella, or any other of the 206 bones. Let's just make sure my face is okay. I like my face." Dad winked at me. Donnie handed him a helmet and laughed. "In that case, you'll be needing this." I really didn't want him to go. I grabbed Mom's hand in solidarity, but she dropped it so she could position Dad's chair right next to the motorcycle, while Donnie took his place behind the handlebars. The whole thing was terrifying. So I tried to hold Tiffany's hand out of desperation, but she shook her hand away because she's the meanest girl alive. And then, out of nowhere, Phyllis grabbed my hand and held it tightly for the first time all day. I didn't feel like I was going to get murdered. Mom counted to 3 and hoisted Dad up onto the motorcycle seat. He pulled his sleeping legs on either side of the motorcycle and wrapped his arms around Donnie's waist. Phyllis let go of my hand, and I wound bungee cords around Dad and Donnie until they were one body with 4 arms and 2 heads. And then Donnie stepped on a pedal, and then a big engine roared, and then Dad yelled some curse words, and Mom shouted, "Bring 'em back in one piece, please. We're getting married tomorrow." Dad threw a peace sign as they took off down the road, toward only God knows where. While they were gone, I beat Layla at Uno. Phyllis French braided Tiffany's hair, and Mom held her breath, staring out the window. Finally, a headlight bounced off the wall. We ran outside and watched Dad, Donnie, and the motorcycle purr into the driveway. As soon as Dad was unbungeed from Donnie, he collapsed into Mom's arms. She had to set him up in his chair because he was all dangly like a rag doll. I don't know where they'd gone, but Dad smelled like trees and sweat and fireflies and rock and roll, if rock and roll had a smell. He lifted up my shirt. "See how tough these marks from the bungee cords make me look?" Phyllis cranked up the stereo, so I had to yell over the music. "Oh man, does it hurt?" But Dad didn't hear me. All anyone could hear was some lady screaming something about buying her a Mercedes-Benz. We ate dinner, and Mom rushed us off to bed without dessert, which wasn't cool because dessert was the only reason I ate dinner. Tiffany and I got into our beds while Layla slid into the sleeping bag on the floor, and Mom quickly wished us good night, turned out the lights, and shut the door. Geez, she could have at least pretended like she cared about us. The next morning, the most amazing smell in the land woke up my nose and carried my whole body into the kitchen. Could it be? Certainly it wasn't peach pie baking, not so early, but I peered into the oven. Sure enough, it was there, the most perfect peach pie bubbling over. "Smells amazing, right?" "Yes," I answered without breaking my gaze with the perfect pie. "I think she's about ready. Let's get her out." It was only then that I realized I'd been talking to Phyllis, not Mom. She must have been making it for the wedding. Defeat settled on my shoulders. It looks amazing. It'll be hard to wait for it. Don't be silly, little one. This pie is for breakfast. Pie for breakfast? Maybe she wasn't a murderer. Maybe she was the most amazing woman ever. Phyllis grabbed a pot holder and opened the oven door. My nose followed the pie all the way to the counter. "Can we eat it now?" "Let's wait for it to cool a little. I'll get the ice cream." Pie and ice cream for breakfast? I ran down the hall and woke up my sisters. Eyes open, ladies. We're having pie and ice cream for breakfast. They moaned and groaned and didn't move an inch. Whatever, their loss. I knocked on Mom and Dad's door. Parents, wake up. There's pie for breakfast. I didn't hear a peep. What was wrong with these people? I had the human decency to share probably the greatest news we were ever going to get as a family, and they couldn't have cared less. But I didn't have time to dwell on their nonsense. I had pie to eat. I already was on my second slice when Mayfield family finally joined my new best friends, Phyllis and Donnie, at the table. Dad looked like he'd been hit by a truck, and he smelled weird, so I said, "You smell weird." "Well, you look weird." "Hey, you're not allowed to say stuff like that. You're my dad." He clutched his forehead. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just have the worst headache." Mom handed him some aspirin and a slice of pie. "This should help." "I see you've made a couple of friends, Maggie." "Oh, we're big fans," Phyllis smiled. "She already lobbied me for my vote and everything," Donnie said. "It's important to get to know your constituents," I explained. Mom took a piece of pie too, which is very un-mom-like. "Well, I expect to see all of you on the dance floor later." I still didn't get it. Why do you have to renew your wedding vows anyway? Did they expire? No. It's just a nice thing to do, Mom said. "It's a nice way of reminding your mom she's stuck with me," Dad answered. "Forever." Mom disappeared down the hall and came back with 2 fancy dresses I'd never seen before. "Here you go," she told Layla and Tiffany. "You're going to be my bridesmaids." They oohed and ahed and disappeared into the bathroom to try them on. Dad wheeled next to me and handed me a bow tie. "And you're going to be my best man, Maggie." "I'm not a boy. First you say I look weird, now you think I'm a boy? What's wrong with you people?" Sorry, I didn't mean best man. I meant best daughter. You will be my best daughter." "I hate bows, you know," I said as I grudgingly took the tie. "What's wrong with bows?" Mom answered before I could. Everything. The wedding wasn't a big to-do or anything. We weren't even going to a church. We stayed at our house. Dad had hired someone to come to do the ceremony. I thought that would mean a priest, but Dad had hired an Elvis impersonator who just happened to also be an ordained minister. Layla, Tiffany, and Mom were taking forever in the bathroom getting ready, and Phyllis and Donnie had borrowed the car to pick up the cake at the bakery. So Dad and I watched the news while we waited in our ties. I shook my head. Can you believe this oil crisis? Are you sure you're only 11? I know. I can't believe it either. Layla, Tiffany emerged from the bathroom in their fancy new dresses, humming, "Here Comes the Bride." And Mom emerged with a big ta-da in the most beautiful white dress, with her most beautiful red hair swept across her most beautiful freckled face. Dad whistled, and I ran to hug her. "You look like frosting." "Thank you." "I think," Mom laughed. Tiffany pried me away. "Don't lick her." Phyllis and Donnie arrived with a cake at the same time as a pink Cadillac pulled into the driveway. It was my duty as best daughter to escort pretend Elvis to the backyard where we was to marry Mom and Dad under a big oak we decorated with crepe paper bells. Then I took my place next to Dad with Mom and Dad's rings, which were still warm from their hands. When Elvis pushed play on the boombox, Layla walked down the aisle, followed by Tiffany, and then Mom appeared, escorted by Phyllis and Donnie. We all gathered around them, and Dad grabbed Mom's hand, and Mom leaned over and kissed him, even though you're not supposed to do that until the pretend Elvis pronounces you man and wife. But I guess it was okay, since they're already man and wife. The pretend Elvis began. "Do you take this man to be your husband, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health? And do you promise to make him your only hunka burning love forever?" Mom laughed. "I do." Pretend Elvis kneeled next to Dad's chair. Do you take this woman to be your wife, for better, for worse, rich or poorer, in sickness and in health? And do you promise to make her your earth angel from here to eternity? Of course. Dad's voice cracked. He was taking this really seriously. I do. I gave them their rings, and then some other stuff happened that included more kissing, and then there was cake from my favorite bakery. The cake had a tiny man and a woman on top that you couldn't eat, which I knew because I had tried and almost lost a tooth. But I recovered and ate more cake while Layla and Tiffany talked about their weddings and how they would be huge and spectacular and rich, and I would see Dad doing math in his head. I was carefully constructing the perfect bite of wedding that was 90% frosting and 10% cake when I asked, was your first wedding as cool as this one? Mom took the rest of the cake away because she knew when to cut me off. Our first wedding was great. Your father wore white tux and platform shoes because he is ridiculous. And a friend made my dress, and we danced to Gladys Knight and Eric Clapton. And then your father's friends wrote something in shaving cream on our car that they shouldn't have. I scraped the last microscopic piece of frosting from my plate. What'd they write? Dad shook the ice in his glass and opened his mouth, but I interrupted. I know. You'll tell me in 10 years. Layla pushed the rest of her cake toward me. What do you remember, Dad? Dad took the last sip in his glass and time traveled. I remember your mother looking like a knockout, just beautiful. And I remember a lot of dancing and shaking a lot of hands and smiling so hard my face hurt. And I remember the punch. And then I don't remember much after the punch. I turned to Phyllis and Donnie. What do you guys remember? Phyllis laughed. Not much more than your dad. Donnie said, we had the punch too. Well, I'll always remember this wedding, I vowed, and this cake. Oh well, it's not over yet, sweetie. Don't you know what happens next? Mom asked. More cake, I hoped. Even better, Mom beamed. A honeymoon. And that is the end of chapter 15. So chapter 16, hopefully we'll tell about the honeymoon. A lot to look forward to in the meaning of Maggie.